So welcome everybody to this month's Global Dev Communicators Connect. We start each monthly gathering with some work that's moved you lately. We want to stir your soul and also ground you. So I'm going to put in the chat here, what is stirring your soul today is the question, the introduction today. And we put these all on this curated Google Doc because we really do want to fuel our own inspiration, our own ability to keep going and have new creative ideas, which are often hindered by working in institutions. And so today we're sharing examples of work that has moved you, that has made you think differently about communications or communication strategy recently. And I'll put that in the chat. So to answer that question, who are you? If you can share in the chat, who are you? Where are you in the world? And what is stirring your soul? That'll be our intro today. And then now I'm going to tell you a little bit though about what to expect today, what we're here for, why Global Dev Communicators exists. We really want to connect to each other. Part of our ability to be creative means we have to build a community where we can feel supported, because we're here to usher in narrative change. And God knows that is a hard thing to do. But we really believe creativity is a source of not just healing, but it's even how it shapes your leadership that matters. And we're here to harvest and share some of that wisdom and knowledge and ideas for just very practical steps that are within this group today. And how do we help shift narratives about global development and international aid from charity to solidarity? So to have that discussion, which often includes stuff that's hard to talk about, we have a few group invitations, and feel free to keep sharing in the chat as we do the quick intro. Our group invitations are sort of about opening up the dialogue. And so we're here to learn. We're not critiquing today. We actually all believe we have something to gain from interacting with each other, which makes this not necessarily a safe space all the time. We actually do want you to be challenged. We actually do invite being pushed out of our comfort zones here today. We do want to operate by consent. So just know that everything that's being offered today is an invitation, and opting out is important. So if that's what you need to do, please do so. And we aim to seek permission rather than assume. And that's like the real flex these days. As much as possible, please use I, not we. That's important for us not to generalize or assume that there is a universal lived experience. There's not. We have many differences within this group, and we're not here to gloss over that. And then finally, you get to be unprepared. You get to say what you're going to say imperfectly and authentically. As communicators, we often have to be so precise most of the time. And in this space, we're going to, just allow ourselves to be here and real. And then finally, I will say Zoom fatigue is real. Springtime sadness is real. So just do whatever you've got to do to be comfortable and present today. And welcome. We will start with a little grounding before we turn to our guests and the film today. And this is important for healing and solidarity, that we reconnect with the wisdom of our bodies, our breath. And we do this in recognition that oppressive systems that we're all navigating disconnect us from ourselves, from each other, from the places where we live and that hold us. So if any of this feels safe and available to you, I just invite you to arrive and slow your pace, to take notice of your breath and listen to a poem to start us off today. It's a short poem called Query by Okitoi-Heisig. We read it last month too, but it felt like a really important grounding for this film we're about to see and discuss today. So this is Query by Okitoi-Heisig. We are a developing country, you say. That we need time to mature, unity to develop, discipline to compete. When we have time, unity, and discipline, and before we mature, develop, and compete, can we dance, dream, struggle? Can we resist your folly with justice? Thank you all for the wonderful introductions that are coming in through the chat. We're glad to have you all here. And I'm now going to turn to my colleague and friend, Joan Okitoi-Heisig, who will introduce our guests today and get us started with the video. Thanks, Joanne.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's such a privilege and such an honor to see so many of you turn up today. And I can see that the interest in this topic is very much in line with the work that you're doing, or you're just here because you're curious, and that's also really welcome. So my name is Joan Okitoi-Heisig, and I am excited about today as well. And I'm going to kick off this part of our session today by saying a few words about Kathryn Mathers, who is one of the film producers as well. And she is with us today, and also Cassandra, who is also with us today. So let's get started. So Kathryn Mathers is Associate Professor of the Practice in International Comparative Studies and Cultural Anthropology at Duke University. And she writes when she feels especially passionate for the magazine Africa as a Country. Some of you might know it. Her latest book, which is entitled White Saviorism and Popular Culture, Africa as a Space for American Salvation, was published in 2022, and it interrogates the white savior industrial complex by exploring how America continues to present an imagined Africa as a space for salvation in the 21st century. Cassandra, I'm going to mispronounce this. Cassandra, feel free to just correct me when you come on. Cassandra Herrman is an award-winning director, producer, and a lecturer at the UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism. As a former volunteer in Kenya and a journalist and filmmaker who has produced stories about the African continent, she was interested in how outsiders, including herself, were framing and mediating representations of Africans and how those images and myths have served us. And with that, I am going to turn to our guests and ask them if there is anything in particular they'd like to share with us. Otherwise, we will begin. We'll stop the recording at this point because the film has not been released yet. Cassandra and Kathryn, could you tell us who do you want this film to reach, and what do you want it to create?
Should I take that quickly?
Yeah, go for it.
It's always been a film for us that we wanted it to be at the center of conversations in US and European classrooms, in spaces like I think many people here occupy in the sort of development and industry sector. And really what we wanted to create is you know, conversations that are that lead to sort of really rethinking this relationship that I think the film is outlining between the sort of desire to Save Africa in this case, and sort of some of the images and representations that it produces. So yeah, for us, it's very much trying to sort of, you know, when we, and Cassandra can talk more to this, like when we started to really sort of figure out how do we take something that, you know, talk about all the time now, but how do we really take representations and imaginings of Africa seriously in the sort of spaces that we work and teach in, you know, without shaming, without blaming. And really the challenges for us in this film has always been to sort of make it a conversation, a dialogue, and to have it open up a kind of set of questions for people, depending on where they're at in this process or in this journey, to really think about the stories they tell and the way they tell those stories, and especially how they represent them, you know, in the West. So it's very much, you know, we always so excited to talk to teachers about it, because there's a lot of sort of sense of needing a kind of way to open up the conversation without just critiquing. And I think that is why, and I hope you got a glimpse of this in the shortcut, that we really pay attention to history, and to the sort of politics of these representations. So it's not about individual desires and imaginings, but social and political ones.
Okay. I'm going to open up the conversation to everyone who is part of the discussion today, because I think it will be wonderful also to get some questions. And we have a first one. Please go ahead, Bimbola. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Abimbola from Africa No Filter. I am so happy that I was sent, you know, the invitation to attend this. This is beautiful. It's lovely. I was moved. And for someone who is in the business of narrative change, I thought I knew, and then I came and learned a lot. I love how, you know, we're not coming at it from a you're wrong, you're right perspective, but we've all been done a disservice. And how can we come together and move forward? It's beautiful. Well done. Kudos to everyone on the team. My question is, what are your plans, if any, to have partnerships to take this advocacy beyond, you know, the school level? Because I'm not in school, and it spoke so much to me. And you find that as a professional, you're trying to have this conversation with people. It's really difficult, but I love how you've come and you're showing, not telling. So I'm asking this question because I think for my organization, these are the things, I know we're already in partnership, but these are the kind of things that we're looking to focus on now. So what plans do you have to partner with people to, you know, have broader advocacy plans using this film? And I know it's still in the works, but just this trailer and I'm sold completely. So I would like to know that.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll take the first part, Kathryn, and then you can jump in. Yeah, and I do want to say I'm so happy you're here. And Africa No Filter is actually the reason we were able to do this cut down. It was incredible. We got some support, funding support to be able to do it. And we've had a few impact events with this, which has been amazing. So I mean, the goal from a filmmaking perspective would be to have a really robust impact strategy campaign where we could take it out into schools, where we could, I mean, I'm, as a journalist and filmmaker, I'm really excited about the potential there to take it into those spaces. We get, you know, questions from educators all the time about when the film would be available. And so those spaces for sure, in terms, and then trying to reach young people. And then I think, Kathryn, you can speak to so we have, I think, these two areas. We have the media and we have kind of education, and then we have sort of the development and aid space. So I think those are the two places that we'd want to kind of reach through an impact campaign. Kathryn, I don't know if you want to add.
I mean, this is certainly for us, the space is, of course, exactly the space we want to be in. And thank you so much, by the way. I haven't had a chance to thank Jen, you know, for inviting us in here, because this is how we're trying to reach out. We, you know, actually through Abimbola, the events in London that Africa No Filter helped us organize, you know, that was very much sort of trying to center this film in spaces, foundation spaces, development agencies, humanitarian agencies. And we've always been in conversation like that. But I mean, I'm going to true confession, sadly, right now, a lot of those conversations are about, like, we need funding to finish this film. And so it's a sort of bit of a catch-22, because I do think, and I think through this process, we thought a lot about what that kind of workshop might look like, how we might use the film to guide questions about narratives, you know, especially the stories we tell about the work, the stories that are told about the work done within this sort of industry of development and aid agencies and foundations. But so yeah, that is definitely another work in progress for sure. And it's really exciting though to hear you know, how you described your response, because I think that feeling of sort of we, you know, and I think everybody here has been asking this question. So I think, you know, that question of sort of, well, we know the critiques, you know, Cassandra and I were always like, oh my gosh, have we missed the moment? Like, is it solved? Like, everybody knows the problems. And then, you know, but then we keep, you know, keep being reminded, keep seeing how sometimes the stories just, you know, they change a little, the images change a little, the inequalities, the, you know, the sort of top-down approaches, they remain sort of, you know, so central. And so, you know, understanding better the space that we can occupy is, I think, something we keep, it's a moving target for sure. So yeah, this kind of conversation is exactly what we're excited to have to sort of guide that.
Awesome. Anyone else with other questions?
Karen?
Go ahead, Karen.
I don't really have a question, I suppose. I come from the global learning, global citizenship education space. We do a lot of work in universities, predominantly with training teachers. And I just kind of want to reflect on, of course, there are loads of great resources out there, and we use all kinds of kind of bits and pieces jigsawed together to try and explore charity mentality. And we really struggle, you know, we're talking young people aged 18 to 24 generally. That 12 minutes I've just watched, I think could do more than hours and hours worth of exploration that we've done. You know, the things that we do use, that 12 minutes is, I can't wait for it to be, you know, how can we use it? When's it coming out? When's it going to be kind of public property that we can not public property, but you know, I just it was great. I was really moved by it, but also just see enormous potential for it having a deeper impact than anything else I can think of, actually, in that particular kind of charity mentality, and getting young people who, as has been said already, it's so entrenched and embedded, and we're so unaware of our bias that it's really difficult. But I just think that does it. Thank you. I just think that does it beautifully.
Thanks, Karen. I've got a follow-up question when it comes to just the historical sort of bit, because I was reflecting while watching it about the origins of racism, and that they go back to the Enlightenment era, you know, when the whole rational man was sort of, you know, the white rational man sort of became the reference point to, you know, to a lot of things in society. And I was wondering, how far does the film go back into history in making the connection between white saviorism and that bit of the Enlightenment? Because I feel like when you learn about the Enlightenment in school, that's a bit that I forgot. That's a bit that's missing. And then when I started, you know, kind of just relearning, I realized that that's the part that I didn't necessarily see. So how far does the film go back into showing that? Because I feel like that's really an opportunity also in the educational value of the film, that could be useful. Yeah.
That is a great question. Sadly, I'm going to say that we don't go that far back. And in fact, in many ways, it's really interesting to think about, because of course, it has become a film thinking very much about white saviorism. Ironically, Cassandra, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, that was, you know, wasn't the sort of language we were using right from the beginning. And so that's interesting. But we grounded much more in the sort of much more recent history, of sort of what we could call in both the colonial history, and so the colonial shaping of representations. And you saw some of that, so that we're thinking more post, and of course it's very much a film about photography, and what the work of photographs do in this conversation. And so it's so the history is both a sort of history of how the photograph has shaped our imagination of Africa and our imagination of Blackness, for sure, and whiteness. And then it really, so it grounds it in that relationship, 18th, 19th century relationship, much more than tackling sort of the history of whiteness in Africa. And you know, and then I think the history that we really hone in on is a much more neo-colonial moment, which is sort of asking why and how is it that this relationship has, you know, not just been maintained, but has sort of flourished, this inequality, this kind of positioning of Africa as a place needing saving. And so that's really a look at sort of neo-colonial institutions like the IMF, and, you know, structural adjustment. And, you know, thank goodness we have somebody like Binyavanga Wainaina, the late great Binyavanga, to articulate for us in a very personal, grounded way. So it's not just this sort of, you know, economic theory. So yeah, so I would have to say that that is not ultimately the story that the film can tell. And you know, and so yeah, it's a much more although I think that that is an important thing to think about in terms of some of our outreach and in terms of the conversations that now, especially when the film will hopefully come out very soon, and in this moment where I think we can really highlight that kind of history in our materials and in what we sort of use as a foundation for discussion, I think, in the classroom or in different kinds of organizations. So that's fantastic to think about.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in briefly because I want to leave room for any other comments. But yeah, I think that's a super compelling point. So just thank you. And I do think we should think about that, particularly in terms of, as Kathryn was saying, outreach. And just to say more broadly, I feel like that we start with this idea of the image of photography, but we're also really interrogating sort of media and pop culture, media and news, because that I think is what a film can do, because it can hold up these visual representations more broadly to bring it up to current day.
Okay. Wonderful. We have some great questions in the chat. This one is from Amy Costello, and she is curious to hear your thoughts about plans to balance in the larger film your critique versus exploring what is working, which narratives embody the kind of narratives you want to see in the world. Once the viewer takes in the critique, what's next?
I try to. Yeah, I'm an anthropologist of these issues, so that is, we're really bad at the what next. Let's just face it. For the fall, as just to, to pick up off Cassandra's point, which I think is really important, is that this was always sort of about thinking about images. And for us, the what next is reflected in the film in opening up possibilities for different images, and especially photographers from the continent. So a lot of our work, actually, we've invested a lot in reaching out to photographers, both older generations, but especially a sort of a younger generation of photographers from really, Cassandra, we've got photographers from Nigeria and Ethiopia and
I think many places, yeah.
Guinea-Bissau, like so many, South Africa, to really show, most importantly, that it's not necessarily up to us to make new images, but to really look at, because this is specifically about representations of Africa, but that, there are Africans doing this work of telling stories and creating images and art and that sort of thing. So for us, that is where the film, I think, stops, which is to open up this sort of possibility and this question about sort of really what, just look. It's there. We don't need, it's not hard to find, really.
Yeah, I would just, jump in and just say, and also I think, listen, like, I think this is a question we get asked so often. And I think this is a classic Q&A thing with films. And when you go to festivals, like, what can we, and I think particularly like maybe American, maybe Western, like, what can we do? And I think that's a lovely idea, but I think we're trying to sort of take a step back and say, let's just look at this relationship and let's try to understand the roots of it and what actually is happening here, this dynamic that persists. So it's a little more subtle in terms of a call to action, but I think in our outreach, we would offer a lot of resources and a lot of things for people to kind of take this education further. And within the context of the film, I think it's sort of look and also listen, and just sort of that, so they're more subtler messages, but in the outreach, we could offer quite a bit more, I think, in terms of what you could kind of do if you wanted to take this work further yourself or as an organization.
Yeah. And I think, Cassandra, what you're just mentioning in terms of interrogating this relationship, I think that's a really good starting point, because I'm just looking at the comments that Nomvula has posted in the chat. Just yesterday she saw an advert that is perpetuating white saviorism, yet we would expect in this day and age that would be something that would have changed, but still I think it has to go deeper beyond the critique to really understanding what's going on. I'm going to pose a question from Christine, who posted in the chat. Christine, if you would like to elaborate, please do, but I think you've written very extensively. So the question is, having worked with university students who are grappling with this, I found that a lot of them walk away from these things with the vision that they shouldn't do anything outside of their own community, and that traveling and connecting across culture is inherently harmful. I think this really misses the opportunity for solidarity and ways that relationships can be mutually beneficial. How are you all thinking about the potential isolationist message that some people might take away from something like this?
Yeah, I will say, I think, and then Kathryn, in the film, the longer film, I think we address this more with Pippa Biddle's storyline. I think she actually sort of directly says this. It's sort of like, I'm not saying don't travel, but this is pretend, think about doing it in this way. So I think she is one way that we address it. And I don't know, Kathryn, yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks, Christine. It is an interesting moment, I think, in this conversation about travel and what is sometimes called global citizenship and those kinds of encounters. And I think, as Cassandra says, I think we definitely have made a film that is really trying to get out of that kind of, oh, I just mustn't go, oh, I mustn't participate, and not stopping there. And I think it's both with Pippa's story, but I think also the Everyday Africa conversations and this wonderful conversations between students in Mombasa and students in Chicago, right, Cassandra? And also actually a little bit more maybe confrontational, but Boniface's challenge to American students to really think about solidarity in a different way. Solidarity not to go and help people, but to work together for problems that are recognizable across that way. So, but yeah, I mean, it is. I think that is that message. We can't control how people perceive things, and when they're coming from this perspective, as I think a lot of college students right now are, which is sort of a feeling of hopelessness in a way about what they can do and what is possible, how to imagine new and different ways to engage that are not imperialist or neocolonial or racist, or and I mean, yeah, it's I think, again, I think the framing of the film is going to be really important, the materials that we offer with it. But I also think I mean, I love this film, and we're so passionate about it and getting it done, because I think it does do that kind of much more nuanced thing that I think a lot of the material, a lot of the critiques tend to do, where they do stop at that, at sort of what is wrong, rather than, well, what could be right in having conversations and traveling and encounters and thinking about the world outside of your own neighborhood and your own locality. Yeah, which has become the sort of de facto response, I think, sadly. Yeah.
Okay. Are there, well, we're just about to hit the top of the hour, and just want to thank everyone who was able to stay until here, and we're going to continue, but if you have to leave, then we completely understand. And I want to invite any other questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, I guess I mean, maybe it's a very naive, optimistic thing to say, but just you should let us know how you think we can each support you in raising awareness of the film in a way which might support you getting the funds to do so. And, because I think most people on this call, from what we've seen, are thrilled that you've made this film and kind of can definitely see its potential for impact and reach. And, I'm sat here thinking, oh, my friend's a head teacher, I'll get her to show, like all of us will be doing that. So what, do you want us to, Twitter's shit at the moment, but, do you want us to share the website on Twitter, on Instagram? What can we do just in small ways to support you at this moment in time?
I mean, yes, you could definitely share it in all those spaces. I was going to drop in the chat too, but maybe Jennifer, I don't know if there's a better way to do that. If people want to, we have a list of mailing lists kind of for people to give updates when we're actually ready, and especially for educators. So happy to have anyone email us and add you to that. That's more a way just for us to try to connect when we're ready. For you to be able to use the film as a resource when it's ready. But yeah, I would say just sharing it out right now. We have Sean Jacobs, who's a co-founder of Africa as a Country, has come on as an executive producer on the film. He's been a big supporter and was on our advisory board. So he's really helping us. We're feeling optimistic about this final funding push. But just, yeah, all the love you want to give us on social media is super welcome. And we would love to just stay in touch, very open to having people email and keeping a list of people who are interested to know when it's out.
Awesome. Great.
And if you have some comms budget left over, they need money, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly frank, the impact it's one thing to get the money to finish the film. It's just so expensive with certain costs that you can't, the hard costs that we cannot get in other ways. But it's really, an impact campaign is actually can be quite expensive too. It can also be like, you can do various levels, but it's definitely money to do impact or outreach too. So that's a separate thing that we'll fundraise for, but we're first going to try to get the film done.
Okay.
I can drop Kathryn, I'll drop yours as well, our emails in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah, please get in touch. If you've got any ideas, we open to them. If you know some, I don't know, do we need a lawyer? A lot of the work is like about clearing permissions and stuff. So, probably need a lawyer in England. I don't know.
Oh, we do actually. Yeah, that is completely accurate. A lawyer in England would be very specific.
Right, I know. Well, for all that Band-Aid.
Oh, right. Yeah. Just going back to the point about comms. What advice do you have for communicators in the global development sector when it comes to, revising the narratives about Africa for audiences, particularly in rich countries?
I mean, yeah, there's such people. I mean, you're doing that work. You know how to do it. I mean, for me, it's always, who's at the center of the story? Why are we still telling stories as if, we are the protagonists, the center of those stories. I mean, I think there's so much. I know Africa No Filter has developed fantastic materials on recentering narratives, but so much of it, I mean, of course, I think one of the problems the film does try to grapple with, which is one of the things that makes it so complex, is that you're talking about systemic foundational problems and inequalities. And so, as we know, I think as image makers, as representatives of storytellers, we can do it completely rightly, but it's all correctly. I'm not even speaking English right now. But it's how people are still reading what we put out there, seeing those images within the framework of this sort of systemic inequality. And so I always feel a little like, I don't know, and I don't want to, so it's, at the same time, we've got to do the work matters, it's important, there's fabulous people out there doing fabulous work. And, but I do think that, for us, and maybe it's overly simplistic as well, it's, and so much when I do sort of try and think about sending talking to students about going abroad and things like that, it's sort of, how are you, it's sort of making those journeys and those kinds of encounters and imaginings, you know, that the voices we hear and the voices we engage with are voices not from our own spaces, not from our own experiences. I'm not making a lot of sense right now, I don't think. Yeah, it's like, use the storytellers from where you're working, use the image makers from where you're working as best as one can, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Amy, the
Yeah.
floor is yours. Thank you
Thanks.
for your patience.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm not a filmmaker, but more of a journalist in other realms. And I guess I'm really impressed by the 12 minutes you showed us, and I'm noticing that we want to keep that in the group and not share it broadly. And of course, I'll respect that. And at the same time, I'm curious about that approach as you're seeking funding. And I imagine you show this to potential funders, but I'm curious about your reservations about sharing more broadly the 12 minutes that you do have. And I think you showed it today to such a well-informed group of people who are genuinely excited about it. And I'm just wondering and again, this may be a very much a documentary film thing. Again, I don't know that world, but I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your thoughts around sharing versus keeping this material, and as it relates to funding and awareness raising. And if you could say a little bit more about that, I'd be very interested in hearing it. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Hi, Amy. That's a great question. So it is mostly, honestly, coming. Well, I guess there would be two things that we've done these sort of smaller outreach events and impact, and there's a couple more that we're going to do. And thank you again, Jen. It is an incredible space to be able to share it and have these conversations. Partly it is licensing. We don't have the rights to this archival material, and we can't actually show it. We could be, I mean, it's a sort of legal problem because we have so much archival in this film that is not cleared yet. And we either have to pay for it or we have to have a fair use argument done up by a lawyer, and we need money to do that. So we are sort of stuck in that way. The music is not licensed yet. We have lots of sort of materials that are not yet licensed. And then I do think there's this tension between, we have this longer feature film and we want that film to be out in the world. And if we sort of broadly release the short, even if we had all the rights, we broadly release the short first, there's a way where we're sort of not creating the space we want to create for the longer film and the conversation that the longer film is going to have. So I think our long-term thing would be as soon as we can, to have this longer film out, and then potentially we have a shorter version that could be used by educators. So it's mostly that. It's not, we would love to share everything right now. Like, we're ready. Like, we've been ready for like a long, it's just we legally, and then the funding issue is really challenging. But I think we will continue to try to do events like things like this, which would be great to do with that. Yeah, sorry, I'm overly neurotic about that, but there is we have this like Band-Aid, like we have things in there that we just can't be like kind of putting up on the internet. That's kind of part of the issue.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we're going to call it a wrap today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your questions. And yes, I think we already shared the link to the website, to the film, which you're welcome to look at. And like Cassandra mentioned, you're very welcome also to sign up so that you can get an update once the film has been released. Cassandra, do we have like a date that we should sort of keep in mind, or not really, not yet?
Oh, well, we could all make an aspirational date together. That would be great. Set an intention. I would be down with that. No, we don't. We're aiming for, we have potentially maybe some money that could come in the next couple of months, and it would probably just take like 3 months to finish, 3 to 4 months to finish, probably, depending.
Okay.
Yeah, we also have a it's linked, it should be linked on our website though, but we did quite some years ago, we did a New York Times op doc, which is the other piece of that, of the film, which was taken from an excerpt with Boniface. So that's the other link. Yeah, but thank you so much. Thank you. It's such a privilege to be here and just really, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we are very grateful that you've agreed to share with us a 12-minute segment and to be part of our session today. Really, really excited. And as we wrap up, we just want to remind you that the next Global Dev Communicators Connect will be next month. That is going to be April. It's going to be the 13th, sorry, no, the 12th of April. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for upcoming guests, we would love to hear from you. Or if you are also open to leading this group together with us, definitely please get in touch with us, and then we can see how we can shape ideas for the next session or for future sessions. Yes, and we've got one more request. If you also feel like you are being led to, sorry, no, that's not it. There's also a BIPOC healing space, which is run by our colleagues, Sarah Diedro Jordao, and that we're going to share also a link in the chat so that you can find out. That's particularly useful for people of color. It's also a monthly space that happens. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for your participation and for your energy and for being here. Thank you for making the time. Thank you so much. And see you next month.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you.
It was really, yeah, that was really great.